When a woman doesn't text you back, when she stops engaging, when she loses interest, it's not always because of something you did wrong. It's often because of something you never became. Most men present themselves like a resume, polite, prepared, and painfully predictable. They try to show their worth through kindness, through doing favors, through being the good guy. But none of that creates an emotional imprint. What imprints are moments, emotional weight, the feeling that something deep just shifted inside her when you spoke, when you stood your ground, when you made her feel seen in a way that wasn't superficial. Women don't fall in love with features, they fall in love with impact. And the reason you're being forgotten isn't because you weren't enough. It's because you didn't affect her in a way that mattered. She doesn't want a man who conforms to her moods. She wants a man who reveals the parts of her she's been afraid to face. That's not about being rude, it's about being real. Emotional gravity is created when your energy pulls her deeper, not into confusion, but into clarity. When she walks away from a conversation with you, her thoughts shouldn't settle. They should spin, not in chaos, but in curiosity. This doesn't require wealth, or fame, or muscles. It requires one thing, truth. Not just speaking it, but living it, even when it's uncomfortable. Secret one, become the center of meaning. Think for a moment about the people whose presence changed you. Not the ones who gave you things, not the ones who made you laugh the most, but the ones who made you feel differently about yourself. The ones who, for reasons you can't fully explain, left an impression that became part of your personal story. The ones who made you question what you thought was possible, who challenged the lies you believed about your limits, who didn't just entertain you, but elevated you. That's the power of becoming the center of meaning in someone's life. It's not about how often you talk, how many compliments you give, or how romantic your gestures are. It's about how deeply you impact their inner world. Women don't become attached to a man because he sends good morning texts. They become attached to the man who introduces them to a part of themselves they never fully saw before. The man who becomes a mirror, sharp, clean, honest, and reflects back the version of her that she's only ever dreamed of being. Most men don't aim for meaning, they aim for approval. They try to fit into whatever version of themselves they think will be accepted. They adjust their tone, hide their truth, and suppress their standards just to stay in her good graces. But every time you mold yourself into something softer, something more agreeable, something more tolerable, you make yourself easier to forget. Because there's nothing to hold on to. There's no edge, no resistance, no identity. You've become fog. But the man who becomes unforgettable isn't the one who pleases her ego. It's the one who awakens her soul. He doesn't show up with flowers and flattery. He shows up with presence, with steadiness, with a truth that doesn't bend for convenience. He becomes unforgettable because he brings clarity where there was once confusion. Not just in what he says, but in who he is. You must stop selling yourself. You're not a product. You're not auditioning. You're not there to be picked like fruit off a shelf. You're there to stand, to exist, to demonstrate something powerful through your integrity. When you speak, speak from the place inside you that doesn't change when you're afraid. Speak from your deepest conviction, your lived truth. Because that kind of language doesn't reach her ears. It cuts straight into her memory. And here's what makes that memory so powerful. It's emotional. It's anchored in a feeling she can't replace. When you become the man who challenged her to rise instead of letting her settle, when you were the one who believed in her potential, even when she didn't, you didn't just make her feel good, you raised the standard. And once she feels what that's like, nothing less will do. Be that turning point. Be the man who, without shouting, forces her to look at herself through a new lens, who sits across from her and makes her forget the world because your attention is that real. The man who isn't afraid to say, I expect more. Not because I need you to change, but because I know who you can be. That single sentence, delivered with calm certainty, leaves a mark she'll carry for the rest of her life. And the most powerful part? Sometimes you don't stay. Not because you don't care, but because you refuse to compromise the vision you carry. Because you saw her settle for less. You saw her fall back into comfort. And instead of chasing, you left. With grace, with dignity. And that absence, strong, rooted, principled, burns in her mind. It haunts her, not with pain, but with respect. It echoes, it replays, it teaches. So, stop trying to be memorable through charm. Be meaningful through clarity, through presence, through challenge. Let your silence speak louder than 1,000 compliments. Let your integrity become the thing she compares every other man to. Because when a man stands for something, when he sees beyond her beauty and speaks to her identity, when he elevates instead of entertains, she can't forget him, even if she tries. Secret 2. Discipline is seductive attraction starts with what you say. Obsession starts with how you live. And in a world where most men are addicted to approval, to comfort, to short-term pleasure, discipline becomes not just attractive, it becomes irresistible. When we talk about discipline, most men think of routines, workouts, or staying on a diet. But that's just the surface. True discipline is internal, it's emotional, it's psychological. It's the decision to stay rooted in who you are, even when it would be easier to become someone you're not. And in relationships, that kind of discipline creates something no amount of charm or romance ever could. Emotional security. Discipline means you're not pulled into every emotional reaction. You don't raise your voice because she's upset. You don't apologize for your standards just because she challenges them. You don't shift your boundaries based on how you feel in the moment. You stay calm. You stay centered. And that makes her feel something she didn't expect. Safe. You see, the average man reacts. He follows emotions, both hers and his. One day he's attentive, the next he's distant. One disagreement, and he's questioning everything. One moment of discomfort, and he's seeking validation. That kind of man might feel intense. He might seem passionate, but he's unstable, and instability is only exciting for a short time. After that, it becomes exhausting. But a man of discipline, he doesn't bend with the wind. He becomes the ground beneath her feet when everything else in her world is spinning. He doesn't control her. He doesn't try to fix her. He simply remains, anchored, composed, consistent. And that consistency creates something deeper than attraction. It creates trust. You become the man she doesn't have to worry about. The one whose reactions are predictable in the best way. Not because you're boring, but because you've mastered yourself. You've trained your emotions. You've confronted your fears. You've chosen truth over comfort, even when it hurts. And that makes you incredibly rare. Because let's be honest, discipline is hard. It requires that you say no to the easy path. It means doing what's right when no one's watching. It means choosing restraint when your ego wants to lash out. It means being able to listen fully, speak honestly, and walk away peacefully. Not because you're weak, but because you value your peace more than being right. And that's why it's seductive. Because discipline isn't loud, it's not flashy. It doesn't need to be. It's felt, it's sensed. It's the way you move through a room without needing attention, but still commanding it. It's the way you look her in the eye and say exactly what you mean. Nothing more, nothing less. It's the way you can disagree without disrespect, set boundaries without apology, say no without guilt. That level of clarity, that level of control, it makes you unforgettable because it shows her that you are not just reacting to life, you are leading it. Most men give in to emotions, to temptation, pressure, but the man who doesn't, the man who lives by principle, even when no one's watching, he becomes a presence she craves, a presence she respects, a presence she remembers. So, no, discipline doesn't mean rigidity. It doesn't mean you're cold or unfeeling. It means you've become a man who holds himself accountable before holding anyone else accountable. And that integrity, that quiet strength, that's what makes you more than attractive. It makes you irreplaceable. Secret 3, create psychological tension. There's a reason some stories stay with us long after we've heard them. It's not because they gave us all the answers. It's because they didn't. They left space. Space for wondering, space for imagination, space for longing. This is what creates psychological tension, the irresistible pull that lives between knowing and not knowing, between certainty and mystery. And this exact same principle applies to attraction. Obsession isn't born from comfort, born from curiosity, not anxiety, not confusion, but the kind of curiosity that lingers quietly in the back of the mind when everything else goes silent. And most men never create this kind of tension. They show too much, too soon. They expose every detail of their lives and pasts, not out of connection, but out of fear that they'll lose her attention if they don't stay interesting. But the truth is, mystery doesn't come from being evasive. It comes from being deep. When you live a life rooted in purpose, when your time is structured, your values are clear, Your direction isn't derailed by emotions. Your presence speaks louder than your words ever could. You walk into a room, and she senses that there's more to you. More than she can read in your expression. More than she can extract from a few questions. And that more, that depth, is what her mind starts to reach for. But kind of psychological tension we're talking about isn't a trick. It's not about withholding affection. It's not about playing games. It's about building a life that has layers. Layers she can't understand all at once. Layers she has to experience over time. This is what keeps her engaged. This is what keeps her thinking about you when you're not texting her. This is what keeps her up at night, rereading the conversation, analyzing the moment your tone shifted, the moment your eyes said something your mouth didn't. You do this by being present, but not overexposed. You let her see who you are, but you don't try to explain every detail of yourself like a biography on the first date. You give her glimpses, not a full broadcast. And each time you reveal something real about your past, your pain, your purpose, you do it from a place of calm choice, not anxious compulsion. That difference matters more than you think, because when you reveal yourself gradually, through real moments, through consistent action, through calm boundaries, you build a tension that doesn't make her doubt. It makes her want. She wants to know more. She wants to understand what drives you. She wants to earn access to the deeper parts of you that you don't give freely to just anyone. That slow reveal creates anticipation. And anticipation is one of the most powerful emotional states in the human brain. And here's the key. Your attention must feel earned, not because you're arrogant, but because you're disciplined. When your time is valuable, because you're doing meaningful work, because you're focused on your mission, because your peace is protected, then your time becomes magnetic. She doesn't feel like she's just filling space in your day. She feels like she's been chosen. And nothing creates stronger psychological tension than a woman realizing that she's been selected. Not because you needed her, but because you wanted her, with intention and control. That's the contrast that drives obsession. Most men give their energy too easily. They text instantly, they call endlessly, they open their hearts in a flood of desperation. And while it may seem romantic at first, it quickly becomes overwhelming. It collapses the emotional tension. It removes all the space where desire grows. But when you hold your frame, when you respond instead of react, when you listen more than you explain, when you show interest but not obsession, you give her mind something to wrap itself around. A mystery not built from vagueness, but from depth. She doesn't want you to be a puzzle she can never solve. She wants to solve you slowly, piece by piece. She wants to earn access to the different layers of who you are. She wants to feel like she's discovering something sacred, not something you give away freely to every beautiful face. And that's what keeps her coming back. That's what makes her wonder what you're doing when you don't reply. That's what makes her smile at her phone just from thinking about the way you said her name. That's what makes you unforgettable. Because your presence didn't just make her feel desired, it made her think. Secret 4. Embrace responsibility without resentment. If there's one trait that separates the kind of man who's remembered from the one who's forgotten, it's this: emotional responsibility. Not the fake kind where you claim to be self-aware while still acting out of insecurity, but the real kind, the kind that takes full ownership of everything you bring into a relationship. Your actions, your attitude, your presence, your emotional impact. Most men want to be respected, but they carry themselves like boys waiting for someone else to do the hard work of making them whole. That mindset kills attraction before it even begins. A man who avoids responsibility becomes a burden. He may not mean to, but he ends up asking his partner to hold what he refuses to face. He looks to her to calm him down when he's triggered, to reassure him when he doubts himself, to forgive him over and over for the same mistakes. That doesn't make her feel safe. It makes her feel like a caretaker. And no woman becomes obsessed with a man she has to emotionally parent. True power doesn't come from how many compliments you give or how many promises you make. It comes from your ability to own your energy. When you're frustrated, you don't lash out. When you're afraid, you don't collapse. When you're wrong, you don't deflect or run. You take responsibility, calmly, clearly. That behavior is rare. It's rare because it requires strength, maturity, and self-control. And it's exactly what makes a woman stop and think, this man is different. The biggest lie many men believe is that vulnerability means unloading every fear, every failure, every insecurity. and hoping someone will love them anyway. That's not vulnerability, that's emotional dumping. Vulnerability is about facing your truth, not bleeding it onto someone else. It's about being honest about your pain and showing how you've grown through it, not expecting her to carry it for you. She doesn't need you to be perfect, but she does need you to be stable. And stability isn't about being emotionless. It's about being aware of your emotions and being able to carry them with grace. When you feel something intense, do you spiral? Do you shut down? Do you blame? Or do you breathe through it, process it, and respond with integrity? That's the difference between a man she forgets and a man she respects. Respect is the foundation of obsession, because respect creates emotional safety. She knows you're not going to snap. You're not going to guilt her into staying. You're not going to fall apart and make her feel responsible for your self-worth. That emotional stability becomes something she comes to trust. And the more she trusts it, the deeper the emotional bond becomes. And here's what makes this so powerful. Emotional responsibility creates admiration. Every time she sees you stay calm when most men would explode, every time you admit a mistake without excuse, every time you hold your ground without becoming defensive, her respect for you grows. And with that respect comes something stronger than infatuation. It becomes an emotional imprint, a deep-rooted recognition that she is in the presence of a man, not a boy dressed in masculinity. You become the person she looks to in times of uncertainty. Not because you have all the answers, but because you have the presence to stand strong while the answers are being found. You become the one who leads with clarity, who doesn't crumble, who doesn't point fingers, who steps up no matter what the moment demands. And over time, that consistency builds a kind of obsession that has nothing to do with physical attraction. It has everything to do with emotional depth. Because while other men are still trying to be liked, you've become a man she can trust with her life. That is unforgettable. Secret 5. Stand firm in chaos. Every man says he wants a strong woman until she tests him, until she questions him, until she brings her full emotional intensity to the surface and waits to see what he does with it. In those moments, most men either shut down, lash out, or disappear. And in doing so, they confirm her greatest fear, that she's too much, that her feelings are a burden, that the man she's with can't handle her whole self. But then, there's the rare man, the one who doesn't react, the one who doesn't flinch, the one who remains grounded even when everything around him is shaking. That man doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't retreat into silence out of spite. He doesn't throw her words back at her like weapons. He listens, not passively, but fully. He absorbs the storm, and without needing to control her, he contains the chaos, with presence, with breath, with strength. And it's in that exact moment, when emotions are high and tension is real, that she sees something she rarely sees. A man who can be both safe and strong. Standing firm in chaos doesn't mean being emotionally numb. It doesn't mean being stoic in a way that lacks compassion. It means being so deeply rooted in who you are that no matter what she says, no matter how high her emotion runs, you don't become a mirror of her chaos. You become the anchor, the one she can rage in front of, cry beside, question endlessly, and still feel safe with. Most men are either explosive or avoidant. They argue to win, or they disappear when things get uncomfortable. They see emotional expression as an attack, and they either counterattack or escape. But the man who is emotionally mature sees those moments for what they really are, tests of capacity. She's not testing to manipulate, she's testing to trust. Can you still be kind when she's angry? Can you stay honest when you feel accused? Can you love her in her storm without letting it shake your foundation? If you can, she'll feel something she's never felt before. Something beyond love, beyond desire, security. And when a woman feels secure, she doesn't forget it. Because emotional safety isn't just about making her feel good. It's about making her feel held, not with your hands, but with your presence. With your ability to stay in the room when the temperature rises. With your calm voice in the middle of her loud fears. With your ability to validate her without abandoning yourself. This is what leadership looks like in love. It's not controlling the situation. It's directing the energy. It's not about having the last word. It's about making sure your words don't add more confusion. And it's not about being perfect. It's about being consistent. When you do this, not once but consistently, You stop being an option. You become a standard. You set a new emotional baseline. You show her what it feels like to be with a man who doesn't compete with her emotions, but makes room for them. And that feeling rewires her attachment. She may not say it out loud. She may not even know how to name it. But deep down, something in her relaxes. Something in her stops fighting. Something in her trusts you. And trust, when paired with attraction, doesn't just create love, it creates obsession. Secret 6. Don't chase. Anchor. From a young age, most men are taught to pursue, to chase, to keep proving themselves until they're chosen. It sounds noble on the surface. Fight for what you want, don't give up. Wear your heart on your sleeve. But when it comes to relationships, chasing too often becomes begging. And obsession, the kind that lives in her mind long after you're gone, is never built through begging. It's built through anchoring. When you chase, you send one loud message. I need you to feel whole. That's not love, that's dependency. And for her, it's not flattering, it's draining. At first, it might feel good. She gets your attention, your effort, your words, your time. But soon, the attention turns into pressure. She feels like she has to carry your emotional needs. She becomes the center of your world, and that responsibility begins to crush the very attraction you were hoping to build. She doesn't want to feel like you're orbiting her. She wants to feel like she's entering your orbit, a life, a mission, a direction that is already moving forward with strength and clarity. She wants to feel desired, not worshipped. She wants to know that you chose her, not because you needed someone to complete you, but because you had already completed yourself and decided she was worthy of sharing that journey. That's what it means to be anchored. An anchored man is a rare force. He isn't cold, he isn't distant. He's deeply present, but he's not reactive. His value isn't proven through constant effort. It's felt in the way he holds himself, in the way he moves, in the way he listens without losing himself. He is steady, he is still, and that stillness doesn't make him boring. It makes him unshakable. You don't flinch when she takes longer to reply. You don't spiral when her energy shifts. You don't chase after her validation like a thirsty boy craving attention. Instead, you remain consistent. Your peace doesn't depend on her approval. Your identity isn't up for debate based on whether or not she's in a good mood. You stand firm, not because you're indifferent, but because you're solid. That stability does something to her nervous system. It calms her. It regulates her. It makes her feel something she rarely feels with most men. Safe. Safe to be open. Safe to be honest. Safe to drop the performance she carries with her in every other part of life. When you stop chasing and start anchoring, she stops feeling like she has to manage your emotions. She doesn't feel smothered. She feels free. Free to choose you, not because you begged, but because your presence gave her something real to want. And here's the real paradox. The less you chase, the more she wants to be around you. Because you become the contrast, the reference point, the grounded masculine force in a world full of men who beg, break, and blame. You stop being just another option in her DMS. You become the man she thinks about when her day feels overwhelming, when she's frustrated, when she's tired. Because the memory of your calm, your consistency, your quiet confidence, it sticks. This isn't about pulling away to manipulate her into chasing you. It's about being so rooted in your purpose that you don't need to chase anyone. You invite, you attract, you welcome, but you don't run after. And when she senses that your life has meaning, that your days are filled with focus, that your emotions are disciplined and your values are immovable, she respects you. And respect is the fuel of emotional attraction. It rewires everything. She stops comparing you to the men who said the right words but cracked under pressure. She starts asking herself how she could possibly feel so drawn to someone who isn't trying to impress her. And that question lives in her mind longer than any compliment ever could. Because you didn't try to prove anything. You simply were. You won't hear her say it. She might never even admit it to herself. But when she meets a man who embodies everything we've talked about, a man of depth, discipline, emotional clarity, purpose, and restraint, he becomes the reference point in her mind. Not just someone she dated, but someone she remembers. The man who changed how she saw herself. The one who didn't just make her feel good, but made her feel something meaningful. The one who didn't chase, but offered clarity. The one who didn't collapse under her emotions, but showed her how to carry them better. That man becomes the standard, the one she compares everyone else to, even when she's moved on, the one whose voice she still hears when she doubts herself, the one whose absence feels like silence in a room that used to sing. Subscribe to the channel and share. Comment unstoppable below if you made it to the end. Let us know you're part of the few who don't just listen, but live it.